listening to Arin It Out, a podcast that inspires everyday people to lead with purpose in their careers, communities, and callings. I'm Arin Patterson, TEDx speaker, leadership strategist, and culture architect. I'm passionate about helping people discover their strengths, develop their skills, and do meaningful and fulfilling work. Through honest conversations and real reflections, we'll explore what it truly takes to lead well, not just in the work that you do, but in who you become. Because it's not about the title you wear, it's about the stretch, the setbacks, and the silent wins along the way. Are you ready to grow, lead, and leave your mark? If so, let's begin. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Arin It Out. I'm your host, Arin Patterson, and today's episode, episode 9, is entitled Leading Without a Title. Now, we often assume that leadership comes with a promotion, a really nice office, or a certain level of authority. But here's the truth. Some of the most impactful leaders I've known didn't have a title at all. And some of the people with the biggest titles aren't really leading well. Leadership is not about what's written on your business card. It's not about what's in your email signature. It's not about the nameplate on your door, but it's about influence. It's about the influence that you carry, the value that you add, and the way that you show up every single day. So today I'm breaking down the 5 keys to leading without a title. And the best part, you can start practicing these right now. So here's the first thing I want to focus on today. You don't need a really nice office to lead. You do not need a really nice office to lead. And I know at some point, and this, depending, I know I have a lot of different ages and stages of people at their career. I know at some point people talked about having like the corner office, and that was the big deal. In my generation, at least in the work that I've done, there are no corner offices, even for the people in high positions. But there are people with really nice offices with big windows and all the things. And so you don't need a really nice office, which equates to being in a certain level of position to be a leader. Leadership isn't something that you wait for. You don't wait for a title. You don't wait for the opportunity. It's just something that you do. Leading well is something that you do. And today, a lot of people are holding back and thinking in their minds, once I get this promotion or once I get this opportunity, once this person leaves, and then that's when I'll lead well. But leadership starts with the seat that you're sitting in right now. And when I think about this, I think about how our culture has shifted over the last 10 years or so, maybe last 5 years, with influencer culture. And there's people who literally are at their homes every single day, but they have access to people and they're able to influence people. And that's how they're leading in our society. It's not because they have a specific title. It's not because they have a specific job role. It's simply because they've gotten people to buy into what they're doing. And so I want you to understand this. Leadership is a posture. It's not a position. Leadership is a posture. It is not a position. Now, here's the second thing. Leadership is about influence. It's not about titles. Now, titles grant you quote unquote authority, but influence is something that has to be earned. You know, how many of you all have encountered in a workplace someone where everyone kind of deferred to this person as the leader or thought they were the boss when really they weren't and someone else was? You know, I personally, when I worked in property management, people would come into my office and assume that I was the boss. And I think it had a lot to do with how I carried myself, how I interacted with my clients and different things like that. And I can't tell you how many times people said to me, wow, this person is the boss, this other person, you should be the boss. And really people like scratch their heads in disbelief. And, you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had a situation like that or has encountered people that I've worked with where one person has the title of boss, but another person has the influence of the boss. And that's why I think it's so important, because you can get a title, but if you don't learn how to influence people and to help people in a way that's meaningful for them, you'll have a title, but you won't have the pull that you need to get the job done. And influence is something that comes from trust, it comes from consistency, and it comes from credibility. So, a leader that struggles to gain the trust of their team is going to struggle to influence that team. A leader who struggles to be consistent with how they speak and interact with their employees, they're going to struggle in their leadership. And a leader who lacks credibility, if I look at you and I struggle to think that you have the information, the know-how to lead in this space, I'm not going to have the influence that I need to lead effectively. So here's what I want you to take away. People may follow authority or a title because they have to, but they follow influence because they want to. Here's a third point. Leadership happens in moments. Leadership happens in moments. Leadership isn't always about the big changes, the big ideas, but it's about how you handle small but defining moments. For example, you could encourage someone who's doubted themselves. So if you have a team member who's really struggling, they maybe are working on something and they're finding it hard to, get their self-confidence up or to believe that they have the skills and the ability, and you just speak to them and help them to understand that no, you have this, you're qualified, you are leading in that moment. Or if you're in the middle of a meeting and you notice that things are getting a little chaotic, they're getting a little tense, you can step up and use your influence in that moment and get everyone on a level playing field, serve as a mediator. That's something you can do when you're in a place of influence. Clarifying communication when no one else did. So we talked about communication all the time. So there may be an opportunity for you to help clarify where there has been misunderstanding and communicate to your team, to other employees, what needs to be clarified. Here's the fourth point. Don't get trapped by titles. Don't get trapped by titles. Titles can become golden handcuffs, if you will. They look good on LinkedIn, they look good on your resume, but they can hold you in places that you've outgrown. And I can say for myself that there have been times I have been applying for jobs and I've simply not applied for certain jobs because I said the title doesn't look fancy enough. And on one hand, I think you do need to be strategic with your career, and sometimes that is understanding what a title can gain you. But there's other times that you've got to say, wow, this is exactly in line with who I am, with what my goals are. And forget what the title says. I'm going to lead and make the best of this situation. Some leaders get so attached to the title that they forget that leadership is not just the title, but there should be substance behind that title. There should be substance behind the person. I had a position at one point where I said, this is a really great title and it's going to get me to where I need to be and where I'm hoping to be. But at the same time, I knew I wasn't in the right place and I had to be willing to let go of the title. And the job that I took right after that wasn't nearly as good of a title. But the job itself after that good title was one that I thoroughly loved and enjoyed. And as you guys think about this, I want you to ask yourself, am I clinging to a title or am I committed to making an impact? Because that's really what matters. All this leadership stuff is not just for the sake of being a leader. It's not just for the sake of, saying that I led in some space or that I had this title. The purpose is impact. The purpose is legacy. And so you've got to look down the road, like whose life will be better because they had an opportunity to work with me, whose career will go to the next level because I was able to help them on their trajectory. Here's the fifth point. I want to share with you a few practical ways that you can lead without a title. The first thing that you can do is deliver consistently. Deliver consistently. Reliability builds credibility. So are you doing what you said you would do? Are you providing the support and the resources and the tools for the people that you're leading? Are you in a place where they can count on you? Can they count on you to do what you said you would do? This is a way that you can lead in certain ways. And one thing that I've had to be careful about is promising deadlines, because I find myself in a position, especially in my current job, where I've got a lot of different demands on me. And so there's times with the best of intentions, I want to get something out to a person and I'll say, I'll get that to you by the end of today. And before the end of today comes, I've encountered three things on my plate that I have to figure out right now, that push that one thing to the back burner. And so I've gotten to a place where I have learned to not put myself in a box, because a lot of times we want to, with the best of intentions, provide people with what they need, but we've got to be careful about over promising. What is the line? Under promise but over deliver. We've got to take that mindset into our leadership as well. Here's another way that you can lead without a title, is by speaking up with solutions. Offer solutions. The workplace is full of opportunities, not problems, not challenges, but opportunities. Opportunities to do better, to create something, opportunities to work with people. And how are you offering solutions to your team? What are you speaking up about? Are you always speaking up with complaints? Are you always speaking up with problems? Are you always speaking up about challenges? Or are you offering solutions to these things? Don't just point out the problems. You've got to suggest some solutions, some things to fix the problems. Here's another way that you can practically lead without a title. You can mentor your peers. You can mentor your peers. You can share knowledge. You can invest in people. And this is something that I personally find value in, not just because of the benefit that I see from a leadership perspective, but because this is something that personally fills my bucket. It fills my cup. And so I'm always looking for typically younger employees, typically young women employees, coworkers, if you will. And I'm wanting to share my knowledge with them. I'm wanting to say, wow, if I knew this when I was your age, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would be in such a much better place in my career. And so I just find value in sharing those pieces of knowledge and really getting to know people so that you can share that. A lot of what leading is getting to the hearts of people. And so if you can build a relationship, if you can build a friendship, if you can build a connection with people at some level, you'll have the opportunity to influence them. And that's all that leadership is simply influence. Another way that you can lead in a practical sense without a title is by modeling your values. Modeling your values. Understand the importance of living with integrity, even when no one is watching. And I've shared with you all on many occasions what my values are. Those being relationships, building relationships, integrity, and then growth and development. And so I'm always looking for ways to demonstrate those things. In the role that I currently sit right now, I find a lot of opportunities to model my values. But on the same token, there's a lot of opportunities where I could do something completely different from my values. But I find it valuable to myself personally to lean into those values, to be someone who tells the truth, who is honest, who communicates with respect, and really just recognizing, I think a lot of things in the workplace come down to how would you want to be treated on an individual basis. And so when I deal with my employees, when I deal with my boss, when I deal with whoever it is I'm having to interact with, I always come from the perspective of, would I want this person to do this to me that I am doing to them? And if it's how I'm speaking, if it's how I'm responding to a situation, if the answer is yes, and I know that I could be settled in that, then let's go for it. And even, I've had conversations with my employees to tell them, you guys can tell me whatever you need. Like, I welcome feedback. I welcome the opportunity to learn and to grow. And I understand that because I sit in this position doesn't mean that I have all the answers. It means that I'm the one who sits in this position. And I welcome opportunities to learn. And again, that's modeling my values. I say that learning is important to me, but if I never ask questions of my employees, of my boss, if I never pursued chances to learn and to grow, would I really be showing, would I really be demonstrating what I say I believe about leadership? And the answer is no. And here's the final way that you can practically lead without a title. It is by building bridges. Building bridges. Create connections across departments and teams. A leader understands the importance of getting people on the same page, connecting people, um, and that's what that is your job as a leader. Are you connecting with the right people? Are you building those relationships that I talked about, building those friendships? Because trust is built in those places, connection is built. A lot of times when you connect with a person who you would not normally connect with, you learn that you have something in common or something that you guys could end up working together on. Or I currently am sitting on a committee with three people that I don't normally work with in the normal course of my day, but I'm excited to hear what they have to say, learn the things that they know, and I just find it so beneficial. And so I believe that you as a leader have to be intentional about building relationships with people. So let's recap some of the things that we've talked about today. First, we started with you don't need a really nice office to lead. You got to understand that regardless of where you sit in your current organization, regardless of your positioning, your physical positioning in a building, that doesn't matter in terms of your leadership, that you are able to lead exactly where you are. Remember, leadership is not a position, it's a posture. The second thing that we talked about is leadership is all about influence, not about job titles. So even if you don't have that fancy office, even if you don't have a fancy door plate that says, this is the director of so and so, whatever, whatever, you don't need that to lead well. Understand that if you have a title, people will follow you because they have to. But if you have influence, they will follow you because they want to. The third thing that we talked about was that leadership happens in moments. And there are moments along the way where we have the opportunity to demonstrate that we are a good leader, that we are someone that people should follow, to demonstrate that level of influence. Remember, leadership legacy is built on small but consistent leadership moments. Don't forsake the small moments. The fourth thing that we talked about is the trap of titles, and that you can get locked into a title because it sounds good. But having a nice sounding title, a pretty title, does not guarantee your influence. It does not guarantee your impact. Remember, titles fade, but legacy lasts. Ask yourself, are you clinging to a title or are you committed to making an impact? And the fifth thing that we talked about was a couple of practical ways that you could lead without a title. And here are those 5 ways one more time. Deliver consistently, make sure that you are building credibility, speak up with solutions, don't just point out problems, suggest fixes, mentor your peers, share your knowledge and invest in people, model your values, live with integrity, even when no one is watching, and finally, be sure to build bridges, create connections across departments as well as teams. And I want to end with this, that leadership requires a mindset shift. Leadership requires a mindset shift. And you've got to really ask yourself, how am I adding value where I am, regardless of my title? And I believe this one question helps us to reframe leadership from being something that's passive to active. You know, even if you are in an entry level role in your career, that doesn't mean you don't have the opportunity to lead. Now, are you going to be the person necessarily that people come to all the time? No. But regardless of what stage of your career you're at, you can always be growing your influence, always be growing your leadership. And I shared with you all, I believe on episode 0, about the time that I directed traffic. And while that was something, it was very much spur of the moment. It wasn't anything I woke up that day saying, you know what I'm going to do today? Lead traffic. Absolutely not. It was not on my list for that day, but it was something that I recognized in a moment. And I've said it before, that moment shifted something in me that helped me understand leadership in a more practical way. I understood that leadership is not about the perfect moment. It's not about having the perfect tools. It's not about having access to anything. It's about making a decision. And for me, it was the decision to direct traffic that day. But for you, it could be making a decision to not engage in an argument with a coworker. to come with solutions and say, how can we talk this out? How can we figure this out? For you, it could be, meeting someone who's at a different stage in their career and sharing the knowledge that you have. Even if you're only a few more years into your career, or even if you're not even more years into your career, but you have more experience in a certain area in your current job, you can share that information with another person. So stop waiting for permission. Leadership isn't something that you were given, it's something that you practice. And remember this: leadership without a title is still leadership. It's about influence, it's about action, and it's about adding value. It's not about what's written on your name tag or on your office door. And whether you're at the beginning of your career or years into your career, you can lead right where you are. I want you to ask yourself this question: where in your current role could you lead without waiting for a title? Where in your current role are you able to lead without waiting for a title? If today's episode resonated with you, here's how you can help keep the conversation going. Follow or subscribe to Arin It Out on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or YouTube. Rate and review the podcast. It helps more people find these conversations. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. Share this episode with a friend or a colleague who's been navigating a leadership challenge, and connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email at hello@arinpatterson.com. I'd love to hear more about your leadership story. Next week is our season 1 finale. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe we're already finishing season 1. And we're going back to the foundation with a big yet simple question: what is leadership? We'll unpack how researchers and practitioners define it, how I define it, and how you can define it for yourself. I want to thank you again for listening to Arin It Out. I can't wait to see you next time. Have a great day.